Owens. Welcome to today's podcast. Podcast is called True Stories. If you've not yet done so, subscribe to my podcast to keep up to date. I'm excited to be sitting down with a special guest today. His name is Jack Durish. Jack does a lot of things. He's an Army veteran who served during the Vietnam War. He served as an Army Adjutant General. He has a father and a grandfather. He just published a book called The Accidental Spy, which is available on Amazon. Jack, hi, and welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you're welcome. So I wanted to do kind of a interview with veterans. The purpose of the podcast is to tell true life stories through the eyes and ears of those who were there when they served. So what I'm going to do is ask a series of questions, and then you can just kind of answer each one, and then we'll take it from there. So this podcast is geared toward anyone who is a veteran, anyone who is currently serving, anyone interested in hearing a true story from veterans who were there. So Jack, my first question is, when were you drafted, or when did you enlist?
I enlisted on March the 3rd, 1966. I had been attempting to enlist in the Navy, but the Navy was taking their good old time. And so I talked to the Army, and they were, hey, we'll sign you up today. And after months of dickering around with the Navy, I finally enlisted in the Army. And at 5 p.m. on March the 3rd, and at 9 p.m., I got a call from the Navy saying, yay, you're in. And I said, yeah, how did you know? I've already enlisted.
Nice. So you were thinking about the Navy before the Army?
Well, I'd grown up on the Chesapeake Bay. I was a Coast Guard licensed operator, vessels for hire. I was a championship navigator. The Navy seemed the logical choice for me.
Do you have any family who served in the Navy?
Actually, I have a couple of cousins that served in the Navy World War II, but I really never knew them. Just I know of them.
I see. Okay. Did you have any brothers who served, or are you the only one?
My brother, he came of age in that period between Korea and Vietnam. He served 8 years in the Army National Guard in Maryland.
Oh, okay. Well, when you served, when you joined the Army, this was during Vietnam. What was boot camp like for you? What was it like back then?
It was absolutely fascinating. I had no concept of what to expect, and it was complete surprise to me. The only thing I knew was what I'd read in Beetle Bailey comics or I'd seen on movies.
Right.
And so when I arrived, it was totally different from what I expected.
Was there a lot of guys from kind of your area part of the country, or were they from pretty much all over the place?
It's funny. I got on a train in Baltimore headed for Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where I went to the reception center. And that train had originated in New York, went through Philadelphia, and then those of us who got on in Baltimore, we completed the load and we started the trip south. It took a couple of days. And pretty much we arrived in the reception center and we started forming up into groups. And my experience going through basic combat training and advanced infantry training, and even into infantry OCS, there were people there that I had met on that train.
Oh, that's neat. Okay. So you went through OCS?
Yes, infantry OCS, Fort Benning, Georgia.
Oh, okay. Can you describe a funny moment from boot camp?
I think the funniest moment was in the very beginning at the reception center when we were still in civilian clothes and freezing. Heading south in March thinking, hey, I'm going to be in the South. It's going to be warm, right?
Right.
I didn't dress for it. When they finally issued us our uniforms, I put on everything I could. I had been so cold for about 2 days, and we were intense. The reception center was no way had the facilities for the number of people who were showing up. But they finally marched us into a large room where we began the paperwork process.
Right.
And the funniest thing I remember was this sergeant standing up there. We were told to stand next to a desk and put our hands in our pockets. Don't touch anything. And he kept repeating that as we came into the room. And finally, I'm looking down on the desk, and there's this whole stack of forms and 2 pencils, all bound by rubber band. And he's telling us, don't touch anything. Don't take your hands out of your pockets. You're only going to follow instructions exactly as you're told. Finally, we're instructed to pick up that pack of paper. Do not take the rubber band off. Do not take a pencil. Don't write anything, and put it under the desk and then sit down. And oh my God. And then we took the first form from the top, a blue card, about a half a sheet of paper, like 5 by 8. And you could look at it, name, address, and so on. I'm sitting there, all right, let me fill it out. But he's going to explain to us how to fill out the first 4 lines, and the first 4 lines only. And I'm getting annoyed. I'm being treated like an idiot, and I'm getting very annoyed at this.
Right.
And finally he says, you may now fill in those first 4 lines, and those first 4 lines only, and then put the pencil down. Mm-hmm. And just as I started to fill in the card, I had a feeling. I looked to my right, and the guy on my right is sitting there with his hand up in the air. And I looked to my left, and he's looking at what I'm doing. And I said to myself, oh, now I get it. They're treating me like an idiot because I am an idiot among idiots. And that lesson stood me in good favor all the way through the Army. Now I understood.
Right. That's good. I like that. Question for you. How did you tell your family and friends when you were joining the military? How did you address that? Did you say, hey, I'm going in the Army? How did you tell them?
Everybody was waiting to find out what I was going to do. I had graduated from law school in June of 1965. And the only thing I knew from that experience was I really did not want to be a lawyer. And so the question is, what are you going to do? And I had grown up adventuring, and it seemed to me going to war was the biggest adventure around. And if nothing else, it would delay having to make a decision about what I was going to do in life. And so I went off to the Navy recruiters and began the process with them. And like I said, that took months. And so everybody knew I was joining. I suppose the hardest thing was when I graduated from OCS and my parents came for that ceremony. And I had lunch with them the day before I actually graduated, and we got our bars. My mother could pin them on. And I told them I had volunteered for Vietnam, and I had my orders in hand for Vietnam. That was the hardest one.
Right. I bet. Well, that's nice that you got to pin the bars on you.
Oh, yeah.
Is there someone that you served with during your years in the service that you remember fondly? Can you tell me about it? Maybe a close friend, maybe a friend you served with in the Adjutant General Corps, maybe it was somebody else?
There's several people. My problem was that I had volunteered for the infantry, but when you go in the military, I don't care what contracts you have, what agreements you have, you serve according to the needs of the service. They'll decide where you're going to go and what you're going to do based on the needs of the service. Those words you get used to, needs of the service.
Right.
And so because of my age and my education, I was older than the average recruit. I was better educated. And I guess somebody looked at me and said, infantry? No, let's send him off to the Adjutant General Corps. And I didn't even know what that was. And so the, the, the short form of the story is that to survive all that year of infantry school, it took a year between basic, advanced infantry, infantry OCS. In that year, you make very close friends, your brothers. You begin to build those relationships that are going to sustain you on the battlefield. And for me then to be taken away from that and sent into the Adjutant General Corps took me into another path. And that came home to me one day after I'd been in country in Vietnam for a couple of months. One of my classmates showed up. He had just arrived in country. He had been assigned to be a platoon leader. I met him at the PX. We happened to run into each other. We spoke a few minutes. And then he left. I wished him luck. And I said, you know, I travel around a lot. Maybe I get by to see him in his unit. As it turns out, my first assignment was as the chief of the casualty branch for the 9th Infantry Division. And 2 weeks after I saw him, I was writing a letter home to his young bride, explaining that he had been killed in action.
Well, no, that must have been hard.
It was at that moment that it hit me that those people that I had trained with and we had sustained each other, that they had gone off the battle and I hadn't. And that left me with the sense of guilt I've carried ever since.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, I probably would have felt the same way. That must have been really hard.
It was.
So in your service in the Adjutant General, what did you guys do? Now, you said you had your degree in law. So is that the capacity you served in? What did you guys do?
As a matter of fact, the Judge Advocate General, that's the branch that they're the lawyers, and they had offered me, hey, you can enlist as a captain, you know, and you're going to be a lawyer, but you're going to have to serve 4 years. And I said, nah, I'll just go the other way. I'll just enlist and take my chances. I want to go to the infantry school. So, and everybody thought I was crazy, and I was. But when I got to the 9th Division, and I'm in the Adjutant General Corps, which of course is administration. As I said, I started out in chief of the casualty branch, then I became chief of the awards and decorations. And then the Division G1 kind of got a sense I was there, and he started throwing special projects at me. And I really had quite a time of it. But the Judge Advocate for the 9th Division found out I was there with a law degree, and he started sending kids to me who needed a defense attorney. And I was the antithesis of Perry Mason. Perry Mason famously won every case as a fictional lawyer. I lost every case. Because by the time these kids got to me, it was, you know, you're better off just copping a plea.
Right.
They got the goods on you.
Oh, wow. So with the people that you served with in the Adjutant General Corps, did you know them? Were any of them from like infantry school, or were they just new contacts?
Most of the officers in the Adjutant General Corps were ROTC.
Oh, I see.
Where they may have served the time in the infantry and then branch transferred into the Adjutant General Corps. But I don't think any that I served with were that type. They were pretty much ROTC officers. And you know what we called them? The Royal Order of Trained Cowards.
I know the term I learned when I was in the service was butter bar. That was common.
Yep, we were butter bars. Yep.
So describe to me, what were your first few months out of the service when you finally separated from the service? I know country's changed a lot since then, in the last 50 years. What was that like for you at first, making that transition?
Well, like I said, I finally was confronted with a decision that I had been avoiding. That what was I going to do with my life? And it's so funny that I said I didn't want to serve 4 years. Well, after I finished my tour of duty in Vietnam, I was given an opportunity to go to Hawaii, for which I had to extend indefinite, and I ended up serving 5.5 years on active duty. And I was just following whatever the path was that was open to me. And I had actually begun thinking about staying in for a career. I was enjoying myself. I was getting,
Right.
in Hawaii, I got to work on an experimental computer project. And I was learning a lot and enjoying myself, responsibility I enjoyed. But I suddenly found myself here. I kind of settled. I wanted to be a career officer, and they said, nope, you're out. And now I was confronted with that decision I had been avoiding. And it took me a few years to finally find a place that I could settle in. I married while I was stationed in Hawaii. And it was a bad marriage, so it was going to end anyhow under the best of circumstances. I now just celebrated my 43rd anniversary with my wife. I got the right one, not because I got smarter, but because I got lucky. But it did take me several years to finally find my place in the world. And the time in the Army, it actually set me on a path I didn't even realize, that I became very good at solving problems, handling special projects. And that's ultimately what I spent my life doing as a civilian.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you were able to utilize your not only your military training and the mental discipline we all get from serving in the military, but
it's discipline. It's the ability to organize.
Right.
In life, you're either going to be organized or you're going to do the organizing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of employees, managers, organized. And then there are those problems, those projects that go beyond what most managers are prepared to cope with. And those are the kinds of projects that they would bring me in. I would make it right, fix it, make it work, and then go on my way to the next one.
Yeah. So describe to me some of the things you miss about the military. What do you miss about being in service?
The family. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, very abusive father. And once I got settled into the Army, it felt like you were in a family. And I enjoyed that. I guess I needed that. But, and I never got over that sense of loss of the family when suddenly I was out in the street, no longer on active duty. And fortunately, my wife kept bugging me for years to join something like the American Legion or the VFW, and I finally did, and I've gotten a sense of that back, being among other veterans and helping veterans, because that's what we were taught. If you're going to survive on the battlefield, you watch out for each other.
Right.
You can say, I'm here fighting for country, I'm fighting for the Constitution. When you're in the heat of it, you're fighting for each other. You're taking care of each other. And given what's happening with the VA and other things today with veterans, we've got to take care of each other.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. you and I both can relate to how hard it is to transition from the very structured, very disciplined environment of the military to trying to be a civilian again. And one thing I learned in my service was that when you serve, you are no longer who you once were. When you leave, you can never actually be a civilian again. You're a veteran, you're a different person. But we can take what we learn and take that discipline and everything we learned and our maturity from being in the service and apply that in civilian life, which I struggle with it first for a while, which I'm sure we all do. And then eventually it kind of works itself out and everything turns out okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Jack. What advice would you give young people today who are interested in serving? What would you say to them?
Run. It's funny. I just had I participate on Rally Point. That's like social media for those who serve. And one day, just a couple of months ago, somebody posted they were 35 years old and enlisted. And I was 23 when I started, and I was, kid coming out of high school has been out playing ball or something. He joins the Army at 17, 18. He's still in shape, and me, I'd spent college and law school. I'd been working as a bureaucrat with Social Security, and I'd been away from that for a while. So, boy, it was tough getting back into shape.
Oh, I bet.
And so when I saw this kid, 35 years old, saying he was enlisting, I said, start running. Just the shape. And even for the young ones, it's you, before you actually get the orders to report, start your basic or boot camp, you got to start getting into shape. You don't want to wait until you get there.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, especially if you're serving at that age. When I entered, I didn't enter right out of high school, so I was young.
Yeah, yeah. But even there were times you struggled, I'm sure. No matter how good a shape you think you're in, that they're going to find ways that you need to get better.
Right. Well, one thing I learned in the military when I served in the Air Force, and it's a completely different world. They all are. They're all very different. But what I learned was there was always, and goes toward making a comparison between military and civilian life. In the service, when I served, there were more opportunities that I could even begin to count. And you could do anything you wanted. You could go as far as you wanted. The harder you worked, the more motivated you stay, the more work you do, the further you go. Well, it doesn't always work that way in the private sector. So that was one of the things for me that I loved about being in the military, was as long as you keep yourself clean, you work hard, you can do just about anything. They're not going to say, no, you can't go do this. And you're not a member of this squadron, or you're not a member of this portion of the, you're not part of this command. You're in this one over here, so you can't do that. They weren't like that. See, in the private sector, it's very strict. It's very, well, you work here, you can't go play in this sandbox over here. And that was one of the things I loved about the service.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, before I enlisted, I was working at Social Security as a claims examiner. And we had a problem. We had just started computerizing some of the operations. And for several months, all the work we sent to the computers was being rejected and sent back. So we were doing a lot of overtime doing the current work plus redoing all the other work. And I finally asked the people, I said, could we sit down with the programmers and figure this out? Oh, no, we can't talk to them. They're GS something over there, and we don't talk to them. I said, well, then how are we ever going to fix this? And this is something people say, what's the difference between being a civil servant and being in the military. And I said, it's very simple. In the military, there's a thing called mission orientation. You've got to accomplish a mission. In the civil service, there is no mission orientation. There is no mandate to do something. The mandate is just to follow the rules.
Right. Yeah.
In the military, we had to follow the rules unless the rules got in the way. If you broke the rules, you could get away with it if you accomplished the mission.
Right.
And that's an enormous difference that most people don't understand. And then when I got back out, and over the years, I consulted with hundreds of different corporations, from little one-man mom and pop operations to multinational corporations in my civilian career. And what I discovered was when you're with the small entrepreneurs, they're very much mission oriented. We got to make a profit. We have to profitably grow this company. You get in the corporations, they're like being in the bureaucracy again.
Right. Yeah.
Do the job. You show up for the 8 hours. You clock in, you clock out, you follow the rules. Doesn't matter what you accomplish. And oh my God, this is awful. They're turning into bureaucracies.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You're right. There's a big difference. One's mission oriented, the other it's just like, okay, follow the rules, clock in, clock out, go home. And that's one of the things I miss about the military. I loved having a mission. I loved having something that you accomplish every day. That was one of the many things that I missed, actually. I missed wearing the uniform and saluting. To me, that was fun. Some people have a hard time with that. I knew guys that in basic training that they seem like the type of personality where you would question why they were there. It's like, why did you join if you have a problem saluting the person's rank, not the person, but showing respect? If that's a problem, maybe you shouldn't be here. To me, it was fun. I didn't take it personally that I didn't feel like I was, lower than somebody just because I was saluting their rank. To me, that was just fun. It was just part of being in the military.
Let me take you back to your first question, and this will bookend this interview. You asked me, I mentioned something humorous that happened in basic training. We had a brand new second lieutenant as our executive officer. Never forget him, Lieutenant Archambault. And we harassed that poor young man. When we figured out we have to salute him, but he has to return the salute. So every morning we would wait for him. He would drive up, and from where he parked the car to the orderly room, we would all be waiting in a row, far enough apart that each one of us would salute him, and he'd have to salute us individually. So we'd salute once. He would salute 50 times.
Ouch. So he got a workout, right?
Yeah, we tormented that poor young kid. But he did do me a big favor. When I was in OCS, and nobody fails OCS, you quit. They're gonna break you down until you quit. If they can't make you quit, by God, you must be an officer. And when I was sometimes thinking about quitting, I would think, well, by God, if Lieutenant Archambault could make it, I can make it.
Right. I like that. That's good. So, Jack, these days, what do you do for fun? You go fishing? What do you do?
I'm, like I say, very active with the VFW. I'm a very active post. I spend a lot of time helping other veterans at Camp Pendleton. We're helping feed and clothe and house young families. At the VA hospitals, we run bingo games. We give them prizes, money they can spend at the commissary. And then I write, and then I spend time with my family. My family's very important to me. So I used to sail a lot, but those days are past.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you help like that. That's good that you're doing that.
I
A
used
lot
to,
of young people today in the military, that they need help. They need, if nothing else, if not from the mechanics of what you're providing, they could use, I'm sure, some counseling and suggestions. And hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this?
oh yeah,
Motivation, leadership advice, that kind of stuff. They need that too, just as much as they do the other stuff. Well, Jack, what are some of your hopes for the future?
get out from under the house arrest.
Right.
It's just, my wife has never seen New England in the fall. I'd like to take her on that trip. We were supposed to go on a Disney cruise with the grandkids this April, but that got canceled. So, and I don't know when we're going to be able to take a cruise again. Until there's a vaccine and enough people have had it, it's going to be a year or two before this settles down. So I think our next trip will to get my wife to see New England in the fall, and on the way visit some family and friends back east.
Oh, that'll be nice, huh? Yeah, it'll be nice when things kind of open up again. It'll be nice to be able to get out and travel a little bit.
Yeah. But still, storytelling is my passion, and I've got 2 more books in this series to complete. One is pretty close to completion. The other one I finished the research, just started the first chapter yesterday, so it should be out by the end of this
When's
year.
What's the one closest to being done called? What is that title?
The one that just was published is The Accidental Spy.
Right.
The one that I'm working on now is The Reluctant Spy. And then the third one is untitled. Although the text is completed, it's untitled. So
okay. Are you doing a series?
It's a series. It's 3 books in this series.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Enlist in the Army the week before Korea War breaks out. That's the first story is he's trapped behind the lines in Korea. The second book is where he is caught up in the Hungarian Revolution, and then the third book, the one that's already written, is where he's in Cuba at the time of Castro's revolution.
Well, that sounds like a fascinating read.
So it's a series of 3 books. There's a potential for more, but then
right.
I have another book that I've had on the back burner for years that I would like to complete. So.
Well, we definitely look forward to when those come out. You're going to be doing that on Amazon, I assume?
Yeah. Amazon. So self-publishing on Amazon is the best course.
Well, at least we have the ability to do that with today's technology, so that's nice.
Oh, this technology, you and I speaking here across computers. I just did a whole bunch of stock trading yesterday on the computer. I do all my banking on the computer. It's incredible.
It really is. Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can do. Well, Jack, hey, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time today and allowing me to interview you for the True Stories podcast. Thank you for that.
Well, good luck with it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping this will really take off, and I'll have the opportunity to interview some other veterans and continue having people tell stories. Jack Durish and I are veterans who share a connection on Rally Point website. Rally Point is the premier digital platform for the military community to come together and discuss military topics, both socially and professionally. Any veteran on Rally Point who is interested in telling their story, please contact me on my website at ericgrantowens.com or directly through Rally Point website. Veterans need to be heard, and we all have stories to tell. Thanks for listening.